Welcome to Underdog Rising with your host, Wade Posehn, where we ignite your journey from humble beginnings to greatness through inspiring tales of top executives and entrepreneurs. In this episode of Underdog Rising, we are joined by Carlos Corredor, co-founder and CEO of Condor Digital Marketing. With over a decade of experience in digital strategy, analytics, and ROI-driven marketing, Carlos has helped businesses grow profitably by combining data with impactful execution. From launching successful companies to driving measurable results, Carlos brings invaluable insights for young professionals looking to stand out and make a real impact in the world of marketing. So can you just walk us through a summary of your career?
I own a digital marketing agency. We're two owners, but I started as a baseball journalist. And long story short, I don't know if some of you guys, if you know baseball, you'll remember Francisco Rodriguez. He was a closer for the Anaheim Angels. And I was given a task to interview him, and he left me stranded more than 6 hours. And that was a tipping point for me. And I said, okay, journalism is not for me. I want to do something a little more impactful than waiting for a sports player 6 hours to get a simple reply or whatever. So that's how I got into digital marketing, building websites and apps for live scores. At that time, it was baseball. And then I went and did a master's in Chicago, in Northwestern, about marketing because I liked it, but I didn't know enough. And then I worked in a couple of agencies in Chicago. And then 6 years ago, I started Condor, which is a B2B digital marketing agency. So that's a summary of it.
You touched on, being sort of starting out initially as that baseball analyst, right? So has being involved in that industry sort of helped shape the future of your career over time?
Definitely. First, it gave me the exposure to digital media at that time. And we're talking about mid 2000s. Newspapers. It was funny. It was cool to be on the written newspaper. The guy on the website, it was an intern. But where the cool guys were and where the experienced journalists were, it was written in the, printed press. But then, obviously, that started transforming. And then, at that time, you couldn't see the live scores on your phone. So that, came fantasy baseball, betting, all of that was coming, and I saw it coming. And that's how I got interested in digital. And also from a storytelling perspective, it helped me a lot. When you can put together a story for an article, then you can ultimately recognize what's a good message in a marketing material. So I would say those two.
Storytelling is a large component within marketing, right? So do you have any advice for the younger generation just on how to start learning or implementing or thinking about how they can go about leveraging storytelling when they're looking to get into marketing careers?
I don't think there's a magic formula. I think it's just simply keeping in mind and putting time into it, right? Keeping it simple and keeping it high level, and then simply putting yourself in the other person's shoes and thinking, what is this person going to think? If somebody said this to me, is it so what, right? Think about the so what, right? You're spinning a bunch of numbers or you're telling a bunch of facts. Like, what are you trying to say, right? And what's the so what in that? So if I tell you the visits to your website went up, this month, that's not a story. The story is what happened. Do I control it or not? Can we do more of that or not? Were the visits some people that I care about that are going to bring me new businesses, right? But it's so what, right? If you can answer 3 so whats, then you have the full story. And then if you can accommodate it in a way that it's easy to understand and to grasp from the beginning, I think that's a good place to start, but you have to put time into it. Give it the importance it deserves. A lot of times people say, oh no, here's the message. Boom. First thing that comes to their mind, right?
That kind of brings up something in my mind when you're talking about that is, I take the time to also understand who you're going to speak to, and I think that's a key element because to your point of how people just move quickly, especially in this day of AI, like, yes, okay, maybe you can use it as a tool to help support, but ultimately, are you massaging that messaging in order to talk to the correct clientele that you're actually trying to convert, right? But oftentimes in our careers, we face moments of mistakes, right? And in the beginning years, we stumble, we're still learning, we're trying to gain experience. From your perspective, what's the biggest mistake that young professionals make when trying to grow their careers in digital marketing?
It's being afraid of going out to the real world and fail, right? They stay in the academia, right? I think it traditionally gives you status, right? Your parents are going to be proud, right? Say, oh, my son has a master's or a PhD, you know. And it's also a relatively safe environment, right? If you do if you follow a routine, right, you're guaranteed almost to not to fail and to get a degree, you know. Whereas in real life, you can do a great job at something and fail on a project, on a pitch, but you know that resilience and that growth mindset, it's to me much more valuable and important to learn it early in your career.
Yes, it can be taught over time by obviously failing, but I think that, you have to go out and experience it and build sort of the callus, right? Of being able to fail, turn around, identify and look at what went wrong so that you can correct it for the next time. Like there's always life lessons to learn, right? During those failures. And you founded, Condor to focus on ROI driven digital marketing. So, how can young marketers demonstrate ROI, which is return on investment, in their work to help them stand out over time in their career?
I think they have to understand the business that they're working in, and every business is different, right? Uh, and it takes some time in the business, but also the curiosity, right? So if I don't know, if you are selling boats, right? You want to know like who is buying the boat. Why are they buying my boat instead of the other one, right? Like if you don't start understanding those nuances and see the guy that bought it and talk to the guy that didn't buy it, or talk to at least a sales guy, right? If or even the owner of the company on why are they selling a type, like having that curiosity to understand the business, that's not only the most important thing, but it's what is most often missed from a young market professional that is going straight to let's see the best practices of ad extensions in Google Ads. You know, it's like that's not gonna matter if you don't know what you put in there, who's reading it, you know, what they're expecting to see, you know, from your website, etc.
Yeah, I think it's great that you touch on curiosity, because I think when individuals are younger in their careers, they're trying to impress, right? And I think they miss out sometimes on that. Just be curious, like investigate, right? Go in and learn as much as you can about the organization or the company, their products, who purchases their products, like you mentioned. And then that information and curiosity will equip you with so much more ammo in order to create a much more effective campaign.
A lot of times junior people on the team, they want to impress by stating some knowledge, some fact or something, and it's like, okay, dude, A for effort, but you know, I honestly, I get much more impressed when somebody has the courage to ask what could sound like a really dumb question. But when you say, wow, especially if you're starting, right? If you're into the job for 2 years and you ask a very basic question, right? But if you're starting and if you ask what could be perceived as a dumb question, I say, well, first of all, you have the courage to ask it. And second, I like where your head's at, right? I like about let's take it in first before starting to, you know, trying to steal the show on how things should be done.
We see that a lot, right? When people are newer or internships, et cetera, they sometimes are a little bit shy or nervous to speak up and out or to ask questions. But to your point, it's almost like it's a necessity. Like that's the time in life when you should, so that way you can equip yourself yet again just with all the information that is necessary for you to succeed. And earlier you touched on, people out there always want to help folks, right? And they always want to kind of give back. And I think they need to remember that, don't be afraid to ask. No question is a stupid question. And people are here to help you, because if they help you, you can ultimately run with it and you take more of the leader's plate. And then, there's a lot of tools and platforms that, marketers have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. But from your perspective, what are the top 3 tools or platforms young marketers should get comfortable using like right away in their careers?
So one is CRM because it mixes marketing and business in one platform, right? So I think that's a good one. HubSpot, it's a good one because a lot of small business uses it, but it could be enterprise, right? So knowing how to use HubSpot goes a long way. I think now I would say, I don't know, not a platform. I mean, ChatGPT, but the GPTs in particular, how to build a GPT that does and that automates things that could improve the quality either of your message, of a deliverable, checking errors, right? But I would say ChatGPT, but not as a conversation, right? No, like building GPTs, or even if you want to take it a step beyond that, workflows or agents, right? And by the moment people listen to this, it might be an evolution, but ChatGPT, GPTs, and agents, I think it's a big one. Probably, very soon more important than a CRM. And I think ultimately a good old Google spreadsheet, it never hurt anyone to know and to understand, and could, or Excel, right? Do some basic if functions, pivot tables, um, telling a story with a couple of simple but insightful graphs and charts. So I think those are three good ones.
I think you're absolutely spot on, right? And I think you're very forward thinking with a lot of the AI elements where, I mean, it's a rapidly expanding, and I think a lot of people are very enamored around the ChatGPT of the world. But to your point, looking deeper into custom GPTs, agents, I mean, that's going to revolutionize the way people work in the future and make things a lot faster, right? So if the younger generation can learn how to leverage those, they will ultimately make themselves desirable to people that are looking to fill those marketing roles, right? Because they can build certain AI agents or GPTs that can really streamline their workflows.
Yeah, today, one person with good knowledge of AI, let's say, with great knowledge of AI, and maybe that'll be tough to do in the first 6 months of your career, but like definitely, let's say, if you dedicate the first 2 years of your career to build an AI practice, or yourself to know how to leverage these tools, you can do the work of 10 people, So imagine the value in that.
Even if you look at simple, I mean, it was around before, obviously, AI, but I know there's a lot more functionality within the platform now. But, platforms like Zapier as well. I know some people Zapier, but even there, right, when you look at the connectivity between platforms via APIs, it just makes the workflow so much more succinct, and you can eradicate more of those manual tasks by just having things zap to one another with the information through multiple platforms, right? Even simplicity like that. And I say simplicity because AI agents and GPTs are a lot more in depth, but even those just simple automation tasks, phenomenal. Definitely streamline workflows.
And I'll even go a step further. It's not only that AI, then automations instead of AI necessarily. Even an if function instead of a full automation could take you a long way. We're trying to build a target audience list, and we say, okay, let's look for companies that are offering, for example, paid media as part of their services. Right? We're looking for competitors. And it's like, well, let's upload a full list of companies to ChatGPT and Perplexity and ask them what they do and everything. And it's like, we didn't get there, right? Whereas if we simply connected Zapier, downloaded the about us of those companies in LinkedIn, and an if formula that says, does it say pay media there or not? That got us a much better matching rate and result. And it was very simple, right? An automation to download something and an if formula, the most basic if formula you could do.
That's phenomenal. I like that you gave that example because that's like a real life actionable element there that folks can learn from. And then it's always interesting to kind of look sort of at the skills that marketers need, right? So if you were starting your career in digital marketing today, not when you did, but what's the first skill that you'd focus on developing?
Not to beat the dead horse, but I want to emphasize the importance of AI. Today at Condor, we used to be, our talent acquisition strategy a couple of years ago was to build an internship program from the best schools in Latin America, right? To build the next generation of talent. And today, we ended our internship program because if something is being done by an intern or by an entry level person, it's probably a red flag that the manager should have uh, used AI to automate that in the first place. So it goes to show you the challenge for the younger generation, that they don't have 10, 15 years of experience, right? But that you could see that as an opportunity. And I tell this, to, my goddaughter who's almost graduating high school. Hey, and she's asking, why she's not sure what to study in school. It's like, doesn't matter really, as long as you pair it with AI, because that wave is coming, and you either hop on it or get grounded by it.
And you raised a great point there, right? Where the sort of younger, a lot of the entry level or internship specificities should almost be accomplished by AI. How can the younger generation position themselves to then sort of get accepted into these entry role positions, right? Or maybe it's another level up because these organizations now are implementing automations with AI. So those internships or entry level positions might become obsolete.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. And I'm not saying you have to study machine learning. You don't need to be a data scientist, right? You don't need to know Python or, very complex regression analysis. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that you better know how AI is being used in your industry. So we're talking about the case of marketing, right? Let's say you like marketing. I don't know. Tell me a channel or a service in digital marketing.
Go ABM if you want to do account-based marketing specifically.
Let's say that, because marketing is relatively broad, right? But let's say you're close to graduation. So when you're looking for an internship, you want to say, no, marketer, right? You're probably going to want to, you are more passionate about either ABM or either creative side or something. But let's say it's ABM, right? Well, then you better know how the ABM services are leveraging AI, right? So if you know, for example, that their ABM is, okay, you build a target list, and it's a good example that we were saying, right? If you can say, hey, actually, I used Zapier to download the list and on a spreadsheet to detect whether or not somebody was doing this service, right? And then I tied it to Perplexity to reach, what content that company has put out there, and then I personalize the message using that. I'm like, okay, hired, right? I'm going to hire that person over, even somebody is an expert in machine learning. That's not going to do me any good, right? I'm an ABM director. I want somebody that can do exactly that, right? So, and it's actually not hard to do, right? That's the silver lining is, or actually to see the glass half full, is that you can learn that relatively quickly, and then you can immensely differentiate yourself from all the other applicants who are just saying whatever random application letter and how they're passionate about ABM, and it's like that, yeah.
And it's also, when we look at all of those tools, often at times people think there's high costs associated with them, but there's not. A lot of them are extremely cheap, or like even Zapier will have, like 100 zaps a month or something like that. Go in, to your point earlier about experience, play around with it, test what works, test what doesn't work, jump on YouTube, look at how you can connect things, and just have fun with it almost, right? Tying into your point of curiosity, investigate, find what works, but then you're equipped to implement those points on your resume, and you will stand out from that competition. Yeah. So I know earlier we touched on, a little bit of sort of like marketers will have challenges over time, right? Or obstacles. So what's the best advice that you've ever received about handling failures or setbacks in your career?
I don't know if necessarily it's advice, but definitely learnings, and it can come from. And I think now I see this, advice here and there. It's a little more, let's say, established now, but maybe not so much for younger people. But it's precisely embracing failure, right? And because that will, first of all, it will get you to do more things, because if you're afraid of failing at something, you're not gonna try the first thing, right? You're always gonna play it safe. So number one, you're gonna do a lot of things. And number two, as long as you are saying, okay, now not only that it will fail, but it's like, okay, what did I do wrong and what did I learn from this? And then you'll apply it, and you'll become a much better professional very quickly. I always make the comparison of competitive sports, right? People that have played a competitive sport, they naturally receive tough advice and embrace it and use it to their advantage, as opposed to getting defensive and saying, "Well, what do you mean I didn't get an A plus? In this project, or what do you mean I'm not excelling? In my new job role, I'm an A plus student all my life. It's like, well, sorry, this time, you didn't do what we were expecting. So I'd say, embracing failure.
We don't want to let people down. We don't want to fail. We want to show them that we know what we're doing in our careers, especially entry level jobs or internships. But that is yet again one of the best times to fail, right? Because that failing and how you handle that failure or adversity will ultimately show your leader your adaptability. Now you're going into showcasing some of your soft skills, right? Versus those hard skills that you get to implement on a day-to-day basis. But you know, this day and age, like, and I think it's also been for a lot of past people, but many college grads feel pressured to find their dream job like right away. Like, what's your take on this, and how should they approach the first few years in their career? Do they go and jump around from different internship to experience, or do they ultimately need to just lock in on that one specific job that they feel like they have to have?
Yeah, I think it's a balance. I think in general, you do need to be passionate about, but there also needs to be a need in the world for that passion, right? You need both, and third, you need to be good at it, right? Or eventually be good at it, or have the aptitude to become good at it. You're not gonna be great or even good at the beginning, but ultimately you need to have a certain skill, right? So if just finding those three things, and to that point, right? If you go to the first one and realize that one of the three is missing, and maybe you might be a little more patient on how good you are, because you're going to build that. But if there's not a need in the market, or if you realize that you don't like what you're doing, and I'm not going to say that you're going to like it as much as I like playing soccer all day long, right? That's not a realistic expectation. But that ultimately, yeah, you feel like waking up and going to work, and the work day goes by quickly, right? And wow, it's already been a week, right? Oh, I want, yeah, not that you want Monday to get there, but at least when Monday gets there, you're somewhat excited about the projects that you're working on. So I would say combat, switching until you combat, you find that combination. When you do, you go all in.
Go all in. I like that. I think it's a good balance of it all, just being able to experiment, because that is the time, as we get older in your careers, that's where you want to settle in and then run that track, like you said, of going all in. And then staying in that same line of questioning, right? And you mentioned being excited and having a passion, and, Mondays aren't such a drag. What keeps you excited about digital marketing and business growth, even after like more than a decade in the field?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think being the owner of a business helps. I mean, it's yours. I think working with people and great people in general. But if you don't like working with people, then you shouldn't probably have an agency. Because that's what you're gonna do.
And I think that's short and sweet and to the point, right? I think sometimes we start out, we have these passions, we love the marketing world that we get into, and then that sort of passion changes, right? Maybe it's not necessarily, okay, it's about the digital marketing like we started out. Maybe it's the building relationships like you do, and then you have your podcast, and it's being at the forefront of AI and technology. So I think it does. I think it over time it changes, right? Because you start off with one area of focus, but then you get sort of opened up to a plethora of different opportunities, and then that passion can kind of bounce around a little bit.
Yeah, I think. But yeah, going to your point, I think because that's a good question. It's like, how do you know that you're passionate about something, right? Well, I mean, you probably also, if you're passionate for a relatively long period of time, as you mentioned, I'm working in digital marketing more than 10 years. I've been working in my agency for more than 6. So I think you also need to feel that you're good at it, right? That's also satisfying, to know that, and to want more, right? I think I'm good at what I do, and we're good at what we do, but we can definitely continue to improve. So it's that hunger for continuous improvement in an area that you like and that you feel that you're already good, probably the main reason.
Now we're starting to get a little bit philosophical here.
Yeah, I feel that the first one was too obvious, so I wanted to give you a little more substance.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. Yeah, we're expanding the minds here now, you know? Yeah. And then sort of just one tip that, I've seen come up over the years within marketing. And I think it ties back to a point you mentioned earlier, but I'd love to hear from your side. Like what's the one question that young marketers should ask themselves before launching any campaign?
We talked about the business impact, right? So I won't repeat that, but I do think is what is the success criteria for this campaign, right? Obviously, a positive ROI, but it usually goes beyond that, right? And if you're working for a client, then you should ask that to the client and have them spell it out, right? It's like, and we have that as part of a process, right? If we're launching a campaign, it's like we have the client say in your own words, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, what does it take for you to say, wow, this was amazing, right? Visualizing that, right? Because then good insights are going to come from that, right? It's not only getting certain number of leads or close clients, but different stakeholders have different views, right? What, maybe the CEO will say, well, if I can sit with three CIOs, that would be amazing, right? So it's like, wow, okay, great. Maybe the other guy says, well, if my boss is pleased with the graphic design, right? Obviously, a little more superficial and maybe not as important, but you have to know what you're trying to accomplish. Maybe, for whatever reason, graphic design has been a big problem for them, and then you say, well, let's look for some references. Is this a good graphic design? That way, from day one, you almost guaranteed the success. So it's like, make sure that you are crystal clear on the success criteria for that campaign.
Definitely investigate, because then you also ultimately know what you're working towards, like you stated, and it makes your direction on that much clearer. So sort of a little swing question here, little out of left field for the baseball reference. At any given time, how many tabs do you have open on your computer screen?
Yeah, right now, for example, I have my second screen here, and I have 10 or 11, and I think that's less than average, which not that I'm proud of or that I like, but it is what it is.
Yeah, no, I tend to ask that to most of the guests that come on the show, just because it's interesting, right? I mean, we're all busy, we're all moving at the speed of light here, trying to get a lot of the work done. And then we've spoken a lot about AI and a lot of applications, et cetera. But from a personal note, right, whether in your day to day business activities or your personal life, like what apps or plugins or software like are you currently using that optimize your life or make it easier?
I was not a believer in meditation. I'm trying, and it has helped me. I consider myself a beginner, but a couple of meditation apps, not necessarily productivity, but definitely productivity enhancers, that has helped. I have my own version of an agenda in a spreadsheet by day of things that I have to do and things that I have to ask or I want to remember to say people when I meet with them, and that to me has been my main um, organization tool. I couldn't live without it, and I'm not saying it's funny because I showed it the other day to a person that I work with, and they are like, and she was like, "Wow, you're a psycho, you're crazy. That would never work for me." And then she explained what worked for her. I was like, "Wow, you're a psycho, you're crazy. That would never work for me." But what I'm saying is just to find, some people, they have pen and paper. I use a spreadsheet that is somewhat complex, but I have everything right there in front of me. Other people use an enhanced version of Apple Calendar or Google Calendar, but it's just like, don't give up until you find your organization space, that you can lean in, and you can leverage.
Precisely. I think you're so spot on there. I think each person has to find their own individual way of working, but it's nice to hear the differences, right, from multiple different people on the different apps or the systems they're using. Like I've heard that, from one individual, they use Asana even in like their personal lives. Like, it's interesting because you hear of that within the corporate world more so, but seeing how people leverage the different applications is very, very interesting. Carlos, I appreciate you spending your time with us, sharing your wealth of information. I just wanted to sort of, as we round out here, do you have any sort of last words or tips or advice or anything else you would like to share with listeners today that might be going into the marketing world?
Well, first of all, thank you for having. I enjoyed it. This time went by really quickly, so that definitely means that you had a good time. Be something else and be a marketer second. Be a business person first. Be a storyteller first. Be an artist first. Be the best at interpreting data first, right? And then be a marketer. But if you're a marketer first, you're probably going to be a very mediocre marketer, is what I would say.
I appreciate you sharing that because that has a lot of impact. I think because a lot of people don't look at it that way. Everyone's like, "Oh, I'm going to be a marketer," but it puts be something else before you're actually a marketer, and it will potentially amplify you being a marketer, right? Yeah, that's great. I appreciate you sharing that, and Carlos, just once again, I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Wade. Appreciate it, man. Great to see you again.